Hey, Guy, welcome to the podcast. Guy, by the way, is the host of Bitcoin Audible. He's my first experience with the Bitcoin, what's it called? The bullish case for Bitcoin. You read it out in that video. I thought it was
Yeah.
amazing. How's everything going on your end?
Oh, everything's going great. Life is wild and busy, and Bitcoin is crazy as always. But no, it's a trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, always going insane, absolutely insane. I feel like there's so many things going on right now. Um, so much going on with Bitcoin, so much going on with random cryptocurrencies. And I saw one of your tweets that I thought was very relevant right now with, let's say, Trump coming out with a coin, Melania Trump coming out with a coin, all these random shit coins that people are really loving and they want to make profits from. And I saw one of your tweets. Do not confuse the casino with Bitcoin. Can you explain what you mean by this?
So this is really hard from like a normal perspective to separate and recognize the difference. So Bitcoin first has like a really long history. There's like 20 years of just trying to solve the problem of distributed consensus of how do you get people to agree on a set of rules without a master enforcing those rules. And it's kind of referred to as the Byzantine generals problem is how do you have it so that everybody can agree on the state of things if you have to expect the fact in a distributed network in computer science that you are going to have adversaries. And this was seen as an unsolvable problem for a really, really long time. And like literally in computer science, it was taught as just like one of those axioms of like, you can't have fast, cheap, and and inexpensive, inexpensive and high quality or whatnot. And Byzantine generals kind of fell into that thing. And it was not until Bitcoin that we realized there is actually a solution. And it was, without getting into the complexity of it, it's about the ability to create economic weight. How do you attach something in the digital world to something that is real? And proof of work attached it to a cost of energy. Um, and ultimately, anything in the digital space, like if you're looking at a digital point or a token, it cannot it cannot actually be attached to anything in the real world. Like if you have like something on a spreadsheet, you were just trusting whoever input that thing on the spreadsheet. If somebody says you have a gold token, it is just a shift of trust to whoever says whoever is holding the safe in the physical world in which that gold exists. Therefore, a digital token can be one of two things: a trusted token, a trust uh, replacement, or a money. Now, why can it be money? Because money is explicitly just a joint record keeping system. It is the record keeping system of society. It is like a language for keeping track of who is owed what. You don't use money. Money isn't consumed. Money is like anything that ever became good money explicitly is uh, described as money, or the reason we pinpoint it as money is because it's literally the thing that I give to you and then you give to somebody else and then you give to somebody else, and it doesn't change. It never changes. It goes all the way back around, and all it does is literally stay the same. And all it does is exchange hands because it is a collective record keeping system, which means that in the digital space, either you are making a trustworthy money or you are making a trusted token. You're making a substitute for something in the real world. The crypto casino, after Bitcoin was invented, and we realized that we could actually solve the Byzantine generals problem, suddenly people realized that digital money was a real thing. Like this was something that was possible. And it began to grow and get more attention and go through its many, many cycles of like, oh, it's stupid, it's a bubble, oh, it's dead, it's crashed, everything's crap. And, over and over and over again, we've done this like 7 times or something. And, but tons of people saw, man, it would have been great to have gotten in on the ground floor. man, look at this thing used to be a penny and now it's $1,000. But it's open source software. It's a completely open network. You can do whatever you want. There was actually a website, and there's a shocking number of quote unquote crypto coins today that were actually probably created from this website way back in like 2013 or 2012 or something like that. I remember I went to it. I was like, "Oh, I'll create a shit coin." I didn't make one, but it was just wild that you could just do this. And it was literally like you just had like a bunch of parameters, and you could just change stuff. It's like, oh, the Bitcoin has a 10-minute block time. Well, let's change this to a 6-minute block time or a 2-minute block time. What's the payout? Is it 50 Bitcoin? Well, let's change it to like 20 Bitcoin or 20 Guy coin or 100 Guy coin. We're twice as big as Bitcoin. And you could just like put in all these parameters, and then you would hit like okay, and it would give you like this little client that you could run with all those new it would just change the parameters, and you could just copy and paste, and you could just make a new quote unquote money. But here's the thing. Money is like a language. And importantly, not only does it have the network effects of a language, in the sense that like it's not beneficial for you to be speaking Russian and me to be speaking English, or me Chinese and you like the only reason language works is if we're speaking the same one.
Yeah.
Now, money actually has that on like multiple layers. This cohesion to coalesce around one standard. This is why in all of recorded history, if you have a global economy, or is the breadth to which your economy can expand, it is going to have a dominant money, period. Otherwise, you have separate economies, literally. So if we have a global economy, you are going to have one dominant money that is necessary to coordinate it as a trade network. Otherwise, you're not in the trade network.
That's why we use the US dollar as a
That's
global
why
form of
we
money.
use the US dollar. And that's why we've just shifted from gold. And that's why if the US dollar is in decline, the question is like, well, is it going to be the BRICS nations? Because you cannot have a global economy without a global money. Money is the most important system of trust in the entire society. In fact, the society itself is just a trade network. That's what makes society society. It can't work without a monetary foundation. There is no trade without money. Otherwise, you have this horrible coincidence of wants problem that you have to have exactly the shoes that I need, and I have to have exactly the chicken that you need in order at the exact same time in order to actually make a trade. That it doesn't scale to like 5 people. It doesn't scale in any way, shape, or form. It's a non-existent economic system. Always has been. So the whole crypto thing blew up because people were like, I could make my own. If I just copy and paste this software, I get this for free. I get to be the money master.
Yeah.
I get to be the trusted source of a new token. And it blew up because it worked. It worked. Somebody did it and made $1 million. And somebody else did it. They made $1 million. The next person did it. They made $20 million. And it just went over and over and over and over again. The entire thing is the attempt to recreate the gains from Bitcoin without caring about what any of it means. What any of it means. And understand that if it is not trying to be money, which I promise you, no trusted token created by somebody who is very clearly present and is making deals with someone is ever going to be a money, because it negates the very nature of what money is. Like the only reason gold was most successful because nobody controls gold. It's not a company. As soon as there is an apparent institution that runs the thing, it's equity. It's just a trusted token for what they can do. And if like the dev groups of like any of these other tokens, like, or the company behind it disappeared, the thing would be dead. The whole project would be gone. It's almost universal across the board. That's just how they all are. And there's like 20 million of the things. Like there's an endless there is no end to copy and pasting free software and getting the apparent new thing. This is the equivalent, when we're talking about it from the context of money, of just creating a new language every time you want to make a new service. Like if I invented a language so that you would listen and you had to listen to my podcast and understand that language, my nobody's going to listen to my podcast. If I required you to learn a new language to use the Apple iOS platform and you had to listen to Apple linguists, like whatever their stupid language was, nobody would ever use it, and somebody would
Yeah.
just write the software in English or in Chinese, in any language that actually made sense. The idea that you need a new consensus, you need a new monetary unit to do all of this stuff is nonsense. And we're already seeing the fact that, like, so many of the things that people said, oh, we're going to do this on a blockchain and we're going to have our own token, that you could, and always, it was always true that you could just build these things without a token and they're like 100 times better, because a token is just a friction. The only thing that it survives on, and you'll notice it too, is every single one that has actually a use case that has persisted is just betting. It's just gambling on other tokens. Like, the most useful of tokens are just trading networks for gambling on other tokens. It's just gambling all the way down. It's turtles all the way down from top to bottom. They're creating the tokens in order to get rich. Everybody wants to buy into the new token because it's cheap and they think they're going to get rich. And everybody who thinks that this token is useful is because it's a token to make an atomic swap network for trading other tokens, which people create because they're going to get rich, and people buy because they think they're going to get rich. The whole thing is just fiat in game. It is peak nihilism of, it doesn't matter what any of these things actually do. It doesn't matter that the concept of utility tokens doesn't even work. Nobody's going to use Apple if you have to buy Apple coin to open up something in the App Store. They're just not going to. Nobody even when you do it with like Starbucks, you don't get Starbucks coin, you get dollars in your Starbucks app. Like, you don't swap your money. It doesn't float. You don't have to worry. If I put $20 in my Starbucks app, I don't have to worry that it's going to be worth $2 when I go to Starbucks to get a coffee. I would never use that app unless my entire purpose was to just think that it was going to go to 100 and I was going to get rich because somebody else brought Starbucks coin. And it's not equity because there's no legal obligation to anything. And trust me, read the fine print. They go out of their way to make sure it isn't equity. They don't owe you anything. There is no reason to use it for anything. It's not going to be money because it's controlled by some sort of trusted entity. And the entire ecosystem, the mindset, the framing is all about gambling. It is just the consequences of the fiat empire pouring into the Bitcoin space and saying, oh, well, just like we created derivatives that are meaningless, and because of all this new money we just print trillions of dollars every year and we shove it to the financial system. Well, they've just created this giant culture of gambling. Like,
Yeah.
they literally gamble our retirements, our pension, everything away. It's all just derivatives on top of derivatives on top of derivatives. And now we're creating financial instruments for nothing. We completely lost sight that the only reason any of this matters is because of what it means in the real world.
Bitcoin is generational wealth, and to secure it, you need to make sure that you take self-custody. Most of you still haven't taken self-custody, and you're taking a serious amount of risk by leaving your Bitcoin on an exchange. Don't be one of those people who lost all of their Bitcoin by leaving it on an exchange that went bankrupt. Instead, reach out to the cybersecurity experts at The Bitcoin Way. Their patient and thorough one-on-one training teaches you how to self-custody your Bitcoin properly, how to run your own Bitcoin node and protect your privacy, and how to set up de-Googled privacy phones to make sure that nobody is spying on you. They can even help you explore Plan B residency programs to maximize your family's options. So when you're ready to go down the right rabbit holes, schedule a free consultation at www.thebitcoinway.com/Rajat. The best investment you can make is buying Bitcoin. The second best investment is securing it properly. Make sure that you don't delay because your generational wealth and self-sovereignty are at stake. Go to www.thebitcoinway.com/Rajat to schedule a free consult today.
Like, a token by itself is meaningless. The question is, what does it give us? What can it correspond to in the real world? And this culture of incessant gambling of everything and derivative tokens of everything has just spilled over. It's like, well, we can actually just completely absolve ourselves of the need to actually pretend that any of this is useful or it does anything or that there's like something in the real world for it to relate to, and we just make tokens. We can just make Trump coin. We can just make Dogecoin. It's just a meme. You own a meme. Well, what do you own? No, I mean nothing. You don't like have a meme. It's not like somebody else can't use the meme. It's not like the meme is better because you have a coin. It might go up.
Yeah.
It might go up. Other people might buy my meme. Doge is funny. And the whole thing is, it is the quintessential peak of just fiat everything. And I think there is this mentality of hopelessness, honestly, of people who just feel like they've been so cheated. Like, I get that. I get the mindset of crypto, and I empathize with a lot of it, because people feel like they have been like overtly screwed by the political and financial system, and they have been. Most just don't understand why or how they were screwed.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not going to have a future, if I'm not going to have a retirement, well, maybe I can just ape into Hawk to a coin, and
Yeah.
and maybe I'll have something. Maybe I'll get rich. And if I don't get rich, well, then whatever. I was going to lose it anyway. I wasn't going to have a retirement in the first place. And probably the best, if you want to take a deep dive on this, I would say Alan Farrington's piece, Only the Strong Survive, is probably one of the best ones to dig into. Yeah, Only the Strong Survive would be a good one, because he hits this specifically and tries to make sense of it. And then also just generally, like, kind of going down the monetary rabbit hole, like, what is money? Because most people think that the idea that it is unbacked by something is not understanding that you're trying to catch the focus.
Yeah. That's why it's not.
The idea that it's not backed by something is a complete misunderstanding of why something has to be backed and what it is backed by. Like, to say something is backed is to indicate that it is a trusted token.
Yeah.
Is that somebody's redeeming it for something on your behalf. Like if you have a token in a Google spreadsheet, it better be backed by something, because otherwise Google just do whatever. It doesn't mean anything. A good money doesn't have to be backed, because it's the monetary properties that the backing is guaranteeing.
Yes.
So I don't know. That's a very long-winded answer, but I hope it painted some sort of picture. I know it's so hard to frame this.
I thought you did a great job.
So,
I thought you did a great job. I have a question for you. I actually I wanted to talk about something else. I've been thinking about this for a while. I heard your reading of the bullish case for Bitcoin. I thought it was amazing. I think I've probably listened to it like 6 times. It's in my watch
it's
later.
Such a good piece. It's such a good
that's
work,
it. I keep listening to it over and over again. I keep catching new things. And I was thinking about something. Do you think that altcoins are basically trying to skip the store of value phase?
I think altcoins have. If you just talk and ask all of the altcoins and the whole shitcoin space what their priorities are and what they think is valuable, you will inevitably get it's a smart contract, like, which is just one of the many reasons why, or many excuses for saying it's a utility token, is that because you use this token, you get this utility. Or it's a meme, which I don't think I have to explain that how completely nonsense that is. Or it's it's supposedly like some sort of equity thing without actually being equity. So in the context of, wait, what was your question specifically about the altcoins? Is that, what are they?
So they're trying to skip the
store
value phase.
Yes. What they are trying to do is, or what they have done is, they've misunderstood what makes a money valuable. And they believe that Okay, so that was really kind of the main number three I wanted to hit was payment networks. Is they think that the money itself gains its value from being a payment network, as if which would be the similar to the argument that the reason the dollar is the world reserve currency is because of Visa, is because Visa is so
Oh yeah.
useful. Like then that makes the dollar more valuable when it should it should be pretty obvious if you like really kind of dig into that claim that the reason Visa uses the dollar is because the dollar is most trustworthy. Is the
Yeah.
dollar is the dominant fiat currency. It's not the other way around. Like Visa couldn't trade, little baggies, like couldn't have their tokens backed by little bags of dog poo, and then suddenly those bags of dog poo would skyrocket in value because of the Visa network. This same misunderstanding is deep in the altcoin space. And so what they are doing is they're completely missing the fact that an independent money is valuable because it is seen as something that nobody can control. The reason gold has been historically the most valuable money on earth and the most valuable store of value on earth is because nobody controls the gold element. God, the universe, whatever, has made it, and it just is. And it can be verified rather easily. The reason gold began to fail as money is because we couldn't use it anymore. We had to use gold substitutes. And now
Mm.
it achieves, or it inherits all of the trust of the token in place of the gold. Like the gold loses its trust because I'm never actually holding the physical thing. Now it's just however much I trust the institution. And therefore, money simply went to a trust token. It was just like, okay, well, what's the biggest institution and most dominant institution that can guarantee the most trust? Well, whoever has the biggest military and owns and controls most of the world economy. Boom. If it's going to be a trusted token, we either trust somebody to. I mean, who do we trust to enforce gold? Who would we
Nobody.
trust to enforce the gold standard? Only the biggest fiat empire.
Oh
Only
yeah,
the
you're right.
biggest military. Because, I mean, if I'm trusting some small country in the middle of nowhere to enforce a gold standard, Russia could just like come in and knock on their door and just like the US could just plow over them and suddenly the gold standard's gone. It is
Mm.
only through dominance that a token explicitly of trust can actually be guaranteed. It just has to be the most dominant entity, period. So when you're in a digital world, when you're in a world where only money can be substitutes, because I can't send gold over the radio. I can't
Mm.
send gold over the internet. So it has no properties. It's just a token again. It's just a thing in Google spreadsheet. And if Google isn't going to give me the gold, I got nothing. I got Google trust tokens. And so everything went to trusted tokens. And all of them survive only on the inherent trust of the institution that controls them. This is why fiat has such an insanely short lifespan,
Mm.
because humans aren't trustworthy. And I don't mean that in like, oh, humans suck and they're terrible and they're stupid. Like, no, it's just basic incentives. If there's a giant back door, like if there was a network that could just be exploited, somebody just had a master key, it's going to get exploited. Like it's just
Yeah.
that thing's just not going to survive in the wild against any adversary. Things that don't survive against adversaries don't survive against adversaries. Like if I had a building that couldn't hold up against a gust of wind, I'm not going to be like, well, buildings are evil and stupid and gusts of winds are unethical. It's like, well, no, your building sucked. The technology of fiat just sucks in a human environment with adversaries. Of course, they will exist. The average lifespan of fiat money is like 22 years. There have been
Yeah.
over 157, I believe. There was a paper. I believe I read it on the show. Actually, I think there's an audio version floating around somewhere. I don't
Mm.
know. I've done like 1,000 of them. There was a research paper by I can't remember their names. About all the periods of hyperinflation in history, in which a money just rapidly, like, its value just vanished into thin air. And like all but like three of them occurred in the age of fiat, like in the last 2 centuries. And this is the nature of trust. If you lose trust, it's just gone. And if your token is only backed by the trust in some institution, well, anything happens to the institution or the institution becomes corrupt, well, your money's gone in a couple of years. That's just it.
Yeah.
Even glass beads, seashells, rhinestones, um, tally sticks. I mean, just like, I mean, go through history on any money that got basically outcompeted by a harder money, a more trustworthy money like gold or metallic metals. Metallic monies. Um, they didn't go out slow. I mean, they didn't go out quick. They went out slow. You know, it took almost 100 years to demonetize glass beads on the African coast.
Mm.
And this was during the slave trade, and this was like one of the big reasons. Like people don't even know this little part of history. There's a great "Masters and Slaves of Money" by Robert Breedlove, and he actually talks about like one of the things that is totally lost in the whole history of the slave trade is that the glass beads on the African coast that were their main monetary staples, main monetary standards, were actually really easy. It was very difficult for them to create with their level of technology, but it was insanely easy for the English to create it. So they would hyperinflate. Well, they wouldn't hyperinflate. They would just inflate the money by creating tons of these. They would go and they would trade with these societies. They would buy slaves from them that they had just, they fought with their neighbor and they conquered and they had a bunch of slaves, and they would just buy slaves from them. So they're just buying like the most valuable capital from this society, because this society doesn't know that the nature of money has changed. And they couldn't print gold, but the English could print glass beads. And
And
so
and
they
that's what's happening
sucked
right
all of
now.
this wealth. They sucked all of
Yeah.
this wealth out of Africa. And that's exactly what's happened. It's the exact same system that has happened through the Fiat empire, because trust is trust, and it falls apart when somebody is in charge of it. And that's our institutions. That's the Fiat empire. That's the counterfeit class and the politicians and the giant corporations and the financial empire. Is they print money and we can't. And so we work for them explicitly. It is one step away from we just do whatever they say. It's just slavery
Yeah.
with extra steps. They print, we work. It takes
Yeah.
us.
And it's just going to get worse because they can just print more and they can. So what they can do, this is something that I try to just hammer home on my YouTube.
Mhm.
They print more. They take our resources from us. They give us that thing that they printed, and most people have no idea. Somebody asked me a few days ago, why do you think Bitcoin is going to keep going up? I said, because the dollar can be printed out of nothing. More and more dollars can be created and added to the economy, meaning that more dollars will chase Bitcoin forever. And
Yeah.
they couldn't wrap their head around it. They just couldn't. They were thinking, oh, I'm in Canada, so I said, the dollars the Canadian dollars that you're earning at your job,
Mhm.
somebody's printing them, somebody's creating them out of nothing, and they're just adding them to the
Never,
economy.
never work hard for something that someone else can make an infinite amount of for
Yeah,
free, because you work for them. You literally work for them. You are
yeah,
going to spend weeks upon weeks building a car, fixing a tool, creating whatever service. You are going to work blood, sweat, and tears, long nights. You are going to, miss time away from your kids, from your family. You are going to be struggling to decide whether or not you should get coffee this morning, or if you need to actually take a little bit more time and work overtime because you're not making enough money. And you are struggling. Your life is being spent doing this, and someone else is making them for free by by the billions and trillions, and they just buy up all of your services. They're just getting all of those resources you're creating. That time that you were devoting, they get the time. They get extra time because that's what they're buying with those tokens that they print for nothing. They get time for free. You get time discounted by half. You lose it at direct proportion that they take it. Money is nothing. Money is just a record keeping system. If you defraud the record keeping system for who gets resources and where those resources are owed back to, it just means that everybody owes something to the person who defrauded the system rather than the people who contributed real resources to it. That's all it means. It just moves around. Like if we're working, like think about what money is just in a person to person perspective. All economic principles are actually super easy to understand. Just put it in the context of two people. You work and you gather and clean a bunch of water. I have a farm and I grow a lot of food. The whole point is that you give me water, I give you food, and we give it to each other in equal amounts. The money is just there to keep a record in the meantime. So if I grow a lot, like we don't get water and food at the exact same amount in the exact same time periods and in the same ways, right? It's going to be totally disparate. So what happens is I have a harvest, you buy a lot of food, and so I now have a lot of money. And now it might take you 6 months to come up with the amount of water that it took me 3 days to harvest from my crop. And so now I am paying you back that money to get the water. Done. What we are trying to do is we are trying to even out our contributions to society. I put in food, you put in water, and the money makes sure that you have to put in water to get it, and I have to put in food to get your water. If there is a third person printing money, they're buying my food and they're buying your water and they're eating like kings and drinking whenever the hell they want, and they've done nothing. They've helped no one and contributed exactly zilch to the economic system. They are defrauding the record keeping system that we are using to ensure trust between us. I'm trusting the money that you're actually going to be providing something of value to the society. And the quality of the money, the ability to defraud the record keeping system is its respective degree of trust. If it's easy to defraud, well, then nobody should ever work for it because it's meaningless. It doesn't mean jack. You might as well just I might as well just take debt tokens that you just make out of thin air because I'm just trusting that hopefully you're contributing. I don't know. Oh, wait. I think you're muted.
I'll just edit that part out. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What would you say when somebody responds to you when you say that? Oh, the dollar is backed by nothing; it's backed by trust. I say that regularly. The dollar is
Yeah.
backed by trust because it is.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say if somebody says, "Oh, but the dollar is backed by the military"?
I mean, where do you think you're going to be able to take your dollars? I mean, well, that's exactly what makes it trustworthy. Like I just said, right? Is well, yeah, you're assuming that the most powerful entity has the most trust because they're going to kill anybody who doesn't agree to follow by the rules, right? But you're just it's not backed by the military. That's just the military is just so big. That's why you are trusting it. But the fact that they have the largest military in the world means that, well, if they revoke that, if they just say, oh, we're just going to print $20 trillion, well, then you have to do what they say because they have the strongest military. It just means that they're your master. It just means that they are the ones in control. That's all it means. And you're just saying that I trust the people in control because they're super powerful and they're in control. Well, if they become your enemy, they're still going to be in control. And you're still just going to work for them. It's not backed by the military. It's not like you can take your dollars and go and be like, I want to redeem this amount of my tank, or I want to redeem this many bricks out of your giant building. Like that's not going to happen. It's not backed by anything. It is backed by the fact that you think they will enforce the rules of the money because they are the most powerful. The rules are what it is backed by. And we have a system where they just make up the rules. They're just arbitrary. They don't mean anything. It's just whatever the most powerful person wants it to be.
Yeah,
It's not backed by the military. It's not
I
backed
like
by
you
the
say.
military. The trust is just you're just believing that they're going to be in charge of it because they're most powerful. But that certainly doesn't mean that you're going to be on their good side.
Yeah. I like to say that the military is backed by the dollar because people in the military are being paid by the dollar. If the dollar
Yeah,
disappears, will these people continue to be in the military?
it won't
Will
be
it be useful?
mercenaries for free. No, absolutely
Absolutely.
not. Absolutely, they don't have any military. They don't have tanks. They don't have anything if people don't trust the dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another tweet of yours that I really liked. I thought it was actually it's very relevant to what we're talking about right now. Bitcoin is backed by proof that it isn't backed by any government. Can you just explain what you mean by this?
So going back to the notion that it's backed by the government or it's backed by the military is a suggestion that the reason the rules will stay the same is because this super powerful entity, the most powerful entity in the world, says they're going to stay the same. Bitcoin's rules stay the same in spite of a government saying they're going to change. The reason Bitcoin is a profound monetary innovation is because nobody can change it. Is because the rules are the rules according to the agreement of the entire network all at once. In fact, I run a Bitcoin node, which enforces it's basically like imagine you receive a gold coin and there's a like you have like a spectrometer, you have like all these, it costs like $2,000 or $3,000 for like all the technology it would that would be necessary to prove without a shadow of a doubt that the entire coin is gold and that you have been given real gold according to the universal rules of gold, the universal law of what gold is, the element. That's basically what my Bitcoin node does for free on the machine that's like sitting just like a couple feet to my left. It does that not only for my Bitcoin coins that come in, but it does so for every single network participant and every single token on the entire system. It checks it from top to bottom down to the 100 millionth of a token of a Bitcoin itself from the very beginning of its birth in January 3rd, 2009, up to this very moment, that the rules have been perfectly consistent, perfectly verifiable, cryptographically secured, and that there is a mountain, there is a, a planet-sized amount of proof of work ensuring that it cannot be changed and that it is nobody's going to be editing its history. That is what my Bitcoin node does, which means that it doesn't need to be backed by gold, because the point of backing it by gold is that it has those monetary properties. The digital system itself ensures the monetary properties. The gold in a trust token is the one ensuring the monetary properties, because you think, okay, well, I don't know if this token has these is actually scarce, so I'm going to go redeem it for a token and a physical token that does have these properties and does have this scarcity that it just can't be arbitrarily created. Bitcoin already has that. It is backed by itself, and its supreme value, the reason it is undoubtedly in my mind the most important, the most valuable asset on earth, because it is the only thing that will actually allow a non-trusted entity, or a non trust reliant global economy to manifest naturally. It's the only technology in the world that can do that, which means that society under a Bitcoin standard will necessarily be an order of magnitude more productive, more fair, and more naturally balanced than a system of like 150 different fiats that are fighting each other for control over their respective networks. It is the most valuable asset in the world, and it is just completely misunderstood. And all it has to do is survive the fact that governments are going to not like that it exists.
Yeah.
It is backed by the fact that governments can't arbitrarily change it. Fiat is literally all fiat dies because it's a trusted token that governments can arbitrarily change. Every fiat with every single powerful military behind it fell when the entity decided that they were just going to change the rules. And the military didn't protect them. The military protected them abusing the rules from the population. Argentina's military did not protect the Argentine population from hyperinflation. It protected the government from a revolution. the Venezuelan, the Zimbabwean, every single fiat currency that is the huge, the endless list, the huge list of fiat hyperinflations, the military was not your friend. It did not back the currency. It protected the government of their ability to defraud the population and eviscerate everyone's life savings, eviscerate their paychecks, and make the entire country poor to keep the elite rich.
Yeah, and it's just going to keep going that way. I feel like there's nothing that's going to
Yeah.
change that. I think the only thing that can change that is people wanting Bitcoin
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and taking it in self custody.
It'll be slow. It'll be incredibly slow. People don't get it. For
Yeah,
very good reason. People think it's an app.
yeah,
And if you say protocol, people have no relationship to that. He's like, what do you mean a protocol? That doesn't mean anything. Okay, tech stuff, jargon, yay.
yeah.
But the thing is Bitcoin simply won't die.
That's it.
That's just the Lindy effect, and it's just a natural shelling point. Is it will become obvious in hindsight when Bitcoin's been around for 40 years, and it's just the thing that stays 21 million, and people keep nobody makes a assessment of bonds like for the last 30 years. They're just like the thing that always performed, so it became the dominant thing. Like there's not like a bunch of
Yeah,
people going like, well, what's the financial policy right now? Like 99% of the population uses the dollar because it's the dominant. Like 1% of us give a crap about like the fiscal environment, what interest rate, and most people can't even tell you what an interest rate is. And the exact same thing will be true for Bitcoin. When when governments attack it and it doesn't die, like has happened many times already,
yeah,
and when they try to capture it, and it'll go through cycles where it's like, oh, it's all captured and everything's terrible. Oh, this big bank got wiped out. Now it's fractional reserve. It's chaos over here, and then somebody's doing something in a different country. It just the whole thing will be the natural, chaotic order arising from endless disorder and survival. And in 40 years, Bitcoin will still be here, and everybody will be like, of course you don't print money. That's insane. Of course you would hold Bitcoin in your retirement because like everything else is just anything else can just be created out of thin air. Of course I wouldn't use a shitcoin because what some Bob created Bob coin? Like what even is that? It's like I'm not gonna learn another language because somebody wants me to use it in the app store. Like it's going to be so obvious in hindsight that an independent, like a radically neutral money was the only way for global prosperity, that it's almost funny looking at it from this side. And I've believed this since Bitcoin was a few dollars. Like I felt like I saw, because I already kind of had a foundation in all of this economics, libertarian history, and Austrian economic theory. On I'd already gone down the cypherpunk rabbit hole. That's part of what had like gotten me into this, and the history of internet protocols was something I was super geeked about, and peer-to-peer technology, all of this. So it was kind of like this trifecta of all of these things that I was fascinated by, and theories that I loved, and libertarian principles, and how society was born, blah blah blah. And it's wild to see Bitcoin like 1,000x and kind of prove out so many of these principles. And it could not be stronger and more obvious that it is still like wildly succeeding beyond anybody's expectations. Like go back 16 years before Bitcoin was here, and the notion of this is so bonkers. Like try to explain somebody to somebody in 2008 that there will be a literal independent like peer-to-peer like BitTorrent of money that's just like a thing on the internet, and people use it, and it's one of the most valuable assets in the world, that is like
yeah.
the fifth biggest largest currency on earth. No. Everybody's like, you're absolutely insane. No such a thing could even exist.
They still say that.
They still say that. They
Yeah,
still say that
even though
despite
it's
its
working.
despite
Yeah,
what it is right now. And it's money has a rather reliable historical path, and in the fact that like every major monetary system in history has always followed this. When it becomes valuable and it is becoming realized as a valuable asset, it goes through store value, and then the liquidity grows enough that it can actually be exchanged, that you actually have enough people who also want to hold that thing for its value and hold it for spans of time, because money is the thing that literally just transmits value into the future. It's across time and space. It's like, okay, well, can I take it from North Carolina to California and still use it? And can I take it from today to 2 years from now and still use it? That is what money does, which means that securing value without some sort of a trusted party screwing you over, or without some, destruction of nature or technology abuse, like being able to break its properties. Like if we suddenly found some irradiation technology or whatever that I could just make, turn lead into gold for like $30 an ounce right now, gold would be done.
Yeah.
Right. Um, but that's just extremely unlikely. It's probably going to cost me $20,000 to turn an atom of lead into an atom of gold. Um, but so in the face of that, or I guess in spite of that, or in lieu of that, if without that occurring, there will simply be a monetary standard that evolves or arises from the fact that there is going to be one thing in society that stores value better than everything else. And then enough people are going to want to hold it and find it valuable that suddenly you can begin to use it in common exchange with just people that you're doing business with. And they're going to want that as opposed to anything else. They're going to want good money as opposed to crap money. And
Yeah.
then that liquidity is going to grow to the point that that its value becomes very stable across time, because buys and sells are happening every single day, not just on some exchange somewhere, but between you and I for services. I'm trading
There's a
the
constant bid and ask, basically.
there's an endless bid and ask. Basically, the liquidity is 1,000 fold of anything that exists anywhere on the stock market or
Yeah.
forex or derivatives or you name it. The liquidity in just normal life becomes so great that then suddenly it can become a unit of account. But these are path dependent. It can't be a medium of exchange until everybody wants to hold it because it's valuable. It can't
Yeah.
be a unit of account until so many people are using it as a medium of exchange that it's the most stable asset in the world. They follow from each other. The people who think they're going to make a token that's both a medium of exchange and a stable unit of account, before realizing that the whole reason that money is valuable is because everybody can trust it, they've lost. They've lost before they even start, because they are going to fail, because they are making an impossible task. It's like trying to clone an infant to cut down trees out in the yard. Like okay, you have the DNA of a human, but you've forgotten that you have to go through a life cycle for that person to grow up and be able to hold an axe and have the skill. They have to survive teenage years,
Yeah.
like they have to survive in the crib for 2 years. You are not going to just copy and paste this thing. That's what people don't get about like altcoins and shitcoins, is that the process of maturation and neutrality is literally a process. It's a growth process that is earned. You don't just copy it and have those properties.
Yeah.
It is literally like, I have, Bitcoin's 15 years old. So when you have Bitcoin that survived multiple potential protocol disasters, multiple civil wars that were attempting to change it or alter its properties and its kind of its fundamental rules, and it survived. It survived government bannings. It survived mining bans and regulations and all sorts of stuff. It's still got a long road ahead. It's still just a teenager. Life is going to get hard. It's in the big boys. It's in the big leagues now.
Yeah. I've noticed that altcoin people get offended when you even talk about the supply. So, for example, I talked about how um, XRP's or Ripple owns something like 80% of the supply, something crazy.
Yeah.
And I got so many like you'd be surprised how many DMs I got of people telling me, stop spreading FUD. this is not true, when it's clear that it's true, when it's
I
obvious.
mean,
If their coin can't even survive an attack from some random influencer on X, then how's it going to survive as global money?
yeah. I mean, honestly, there's an element of if, and this goes for Bitcoiners too. Um, is if you're insecure about like somebody posting a tweet and thinking that it's going to have like a fundamental difference on the long term of whatever project or token you're invested in, you need to get out of that because you don't even have the confidence that this is what you think it is or what people say it is. You
Yeah,
probably don't know anything about it. And I don't mean that in like an insulting way, but just realize from a self reflecting point of view, like, I don't give a shit. I don't care what somebody says about Bitcoin. I don't care. Like, do you have any idea how stupid people thought I was when I talked about this in 2012? 2013. Like, you were an idiot. You're just buying into some multi-marketing scheme. And then the crypto bubble happened and I'm trying to explain that it's like differentiated and people just don't get what this is and they don't understand it any better. It's just more stuff is happening and there's more obvious scams attached to this whole ecosystem and it's super noisy and nobody gets it. Now everybody's just talking about it because it's the thing that's all hyped up right now. Dude, if I didn't have if I didn't know how Bitcoin worked, and I didn't have the conviction. Like, if you are bothered by FUD and you really think that it's going to be a problem, then there might be something wrong either with that system, because that system's going to die. If that is actually going to be a problem for your system, that system's dead in the water. It is
yeah,
never going to be some trusted money for any any sizable economy. Or you have no idea what you're holding.
yeah,
And in both of those situations, you just need to get rid of it. And if you're holding Bitcoin and you're worried about that, you need to get rid of Bitcoin too until you understand it a little bit better. Or just stop. Just pause and take 10 hours and start going through some fundamentals. Like, try to get your head around what you were holding on to. Because FUD doesn't matter and Ripple
yeah,
is a scam. I'm sorry. But like, look at go back into the history of this. I think we have I had another show that we did for a while called Shitcoin Insider, which was just kind of like a fun little side project. It was a guilty pleasure of mine. And I'm pretty sure we did an episode on Ripple, which was first a token issued by the company, and then they made a subsidiary. Like go through the depositions with Garlinghouse, and like the history of that is so obvious. They created a token during the crypto cycle. They own practically all of the tokens. This was the story of all of them. This is the same story over and over and over again. They sold it to people. They, as a company, tried to partner with a whole bunch of financial institutions and claim that theirs was going to be better. They were trying to make it a like interbank like settlement system that was going to replace Fedwire and all of this stuff. And when that started failing and suddenly it looked like the SEC was they needed to distance themselves, well then they split off the project and tried to make it seem like it had nothing to do with Ripple, the company, and this is its own little thing. And it doesn't matter that we own all the coins and like we've issued all of this stuff now. Like these are, oh, you're talking about XRP. That's a whole different project over there. And the entire thing has survived from like announcement of partnership to announcement of partnership. And I promise you, if your token has partnerships, your token is a scam and it's certainly not money
yeah. I
because
like to say
Bitcoin doesn't have
gold has no
partnerships.
partnerships. Yeah,
You don't have partnerships with gold. Nobody
yeah,
calls up the gold incorporated,
yeah,
institution and says like, "Hey man, can we use your stuff?" Like, if you think it's going to be sold as a payment network that has its own floating token. The reason Fedwire works is because it's a simple communication protocol, but the Fedwire doesn't have Fedwire coin. It doesn't float against the dollar. It's a payment system for the dollar. We're back
yeah,
to the Visa and dog poo bags analogy and principle that it's not the current the money is the thing that is valuable. You will not like fix Fedwire by having a floating token that has a better payment network because it's not a better payment network. if it's got its own token? Nobody wants that trash. The only reason, and I do not mean this in like an offensive way, but nobody's going to buy that because they think they're going to use it for interbank connections. They're going to buy it because somebody said we partnered with a big bank and that's a big name. They think it's going to go up in price. And the people who think that that's how Bitcoin works are the people who will lose so much money on Bitcoin because they won't understand why it went up, and they're going to buy it and then it's going to fall and they're going to get scared and they're going to have no conviction and they're going to sell it when it's low because now it's back down to 90,000. It's definitely dead this time. You never understood what you had. If Bitcoin falls, it's a buying opportunity because its monetary rules and its principles are still the same. It is still trustworthy and it does not have partnerships and it is not backed by a government, and yet it is still Bitcoin in the face of that. That is why it is valuable.
Yeah.
It's hard to
And
explain to people, and
I think you did a great job. And that actually takes us to the next tweet of yours that I
yeah.
wanted to talk about. I
I
think
just
this
want
was
to say,
another. Of
the
course,
reason I get like super passionate about this is because I have had so many conversations with people who have just lost so much money.
yeah.
And I've been doing this for years and years. And I have tried to, I promise you, there's not nobody who has listened to my podcast for 7 years and just understood. And this doesn't mean that like I'm right about everything. That's not even really the relevant point here. Like I'm wrong on a million specifics. I talk out of my butt often and just have opinions or thoughts about things.
Everybody
But
does.
from a concept of the underlying principles and the underlying value, anybody who listened to me for the entirety of my podcast, not a soul got wrecked. Not one of them. They withdrew their coins. They only bought Bitcoin. They bought slowly. They were patient. They knew that this was a long-term game and that if it fell, then all you need to do is rethink and readjust, have the principles of the money changed, have the rules of the money changed. They have not. Okay, keep stacking. Turtle. Patience. Move forward. This is a long, understand, going through those store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account, historically, that takes 100 years.
Hmm.
People do not realize the scale of what a monetary invention is. People think we're all going to be on TikTok in 3 years. That's not money. That is not money. That's an app. That's a payment system. That's a social network. Those are toys on top of the economic system. This is a foundation below a new economic system. I think it will happen faster because we're in the age of the internet and we're in the technological age. But faster means 40 years. Faster means 3 generations to Bitcoin becoming the standard. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And I promise you, it's not going to happen on this cycle when it shoots up to 500,000. And it's not going to die when it falls all the way back down to 100,000. And if you don't understand what you have, you are going to get wrecked. You are going to get destroyed. But anybody who just who has the picture in their mind that this is a monetary shift, this is a long-term game, and this is about trust, they're all doing great.
Hmm.
And I don't mean this as like just listen to Guy and do what Guy says. I mean that I try to do everything I can to make sure that I only say things that are going to align you with reality. And I go out of my way to try to make sure that that is the case. And people have just been getting just endlessly clobbered. Like I see people lose their retirements. I see people lose the money they've saved for their kids. People who had money that they were going to go on a honeymoon with. People who even bought Bitcoin but kept it on an exchange because they wanted to trade a whole bunch of stuff, and then the exchange rugged them. And I've tried to see if I could help somebody get back about $200,000 in something that was hacked and stolen from them because they had their email hacked and they weren't holding their own keys. Like I have seen all of it, and I'm just exhausted with people excusing the fact that they're putting themselves at insane levels of harm and trust. If
Yeah.
XRP, if the Ripple company does something stupid, I promise you, XRP is going to die. It's a trash token, and it exists solely on the ignorance of new people coming in. And ignorant is not a mean word. I don't mean everybody's ignorant about 99% of everything. I mean the fact that specifically the principles that would make XRP something worthwhile are explicitly not understood and are not only by the people who run it, but also by the people who buy it. And they bet on that. They need that to be the case. Anyway.
Yeah. I think you said that really well. I feel like people are definitely going to they're going to get wrecked. I'm seeing so many posts from people saying, "Oh, XRP is going to 100, XRP is going to 1,000, XRP is going to $10,000." It's not going to happen. Like,
On
I mean,
what?
if it
Because of what
happens,
reason? Because it's a trusted money?
that's it. it
Because
they think it's happening
it's a
because
utility token for some bank that's partnering with
yeah,
them?
that's what
Like,
they think. Yeah,
because why? What is worth a $3 trillion market cap? Now, gambling might have a $3 trillion market cap during the fiat endgame. I will actually give you that. But it is still going, it still has the same, we're still talking about a 15, 20-year trend. We're talking about the fall of the fiat empire, in my opinion. Like where I
yeah,
think we are in this big transition, everybody in Nazi Germany, everybody in Germany during the fall of the Reichsmark, before the rise of the Nazis and everything, when they had their hyperinflation, one of the crazy things when you read about that period in history is that so many people thought they were getting rich
hmm.
because real estate and housing was skyrocketing. The stock market was skyrocketing. Everybody and their cousin got into the stock market and started trading. Tell me that doesn't sound a little familiar.
Crypto.
Robinhood. Everybody trades.
Yeah.
Stock equity is good for everybody. This doesn't make sense in a healthy society.
I was actually going to say, I went to a doctor's appointment and
Mm-hmm.
the doctor was flipping through some tabs
Mm-hmm.
and she had a page that showed her Vanguard dividend ETF. So I'm just thinking, are you focused on learning about what you're supposed to be doing or
Yeah.
keeping up to date with the news, or are you focused on your investment portfolio? And you can't really blame her either because that's her wealth.
Yeah.
She can't save in dollars. There's no foundation with the dollars. If she just saved in dollars and dollars just stayed as what they were, she wouldn't have to be researching what her dollar is doing because she could just hold on to dollars and she could trust or she could verify that her dollar is worth whatever it says it's worth. But now she has to go and she has to go through Fidelity. She has to get a dividend paying stock, an ETF, whatever it is, and she has to pay attention to it all the time. Think about how much time that wastes.
Yeah. A society, the whole point of society is specialization. Go
Yeah.
back to our example. You figure out how to get the water and you get better at getting water. You get more efficient at getting water. You eat, sleep, and breathe the concept of acquiring good water in order that I get the benefits of your insane knowledge and skill by me doing the exact same thing about getting food out of my harvest, by herding animals or whatever it is that I'm doing in order to acquire food. I eat, sleep, and breathe food. And the fact that we trade, this is important to understand where the value of money comes from. It is in trade. Because if I only have food and then I have to rely on my own knowledge in order to get water, well, suddenly I have, let's say my level score for acquiring food is level 100. My level for acquiring water is level 2. Your level for acquiring water is 100. Your level for acquiring, like, think about it in the concept of game, right? Your level for food is 2. If we can trade, I get to use my 100 level benefit to obtain 100 level water acquisition of water. And you get 100 level of food through trade with me, utilizing your one. Imagine if you could level up every one of your stats by only leveling up one stat, because then you could trade and you could borrow the stats of everyone else. That's where the value of the money is. It's in the fact that with you as a trading partner and with a solid, reliable, trustworthy trading mechanism, I can actually I can both master food, but I can also master technology. I can also master water. I can also master travel. I don't know how to build a car. I'm actually
Yeah.
super mechanically thing, but I could build a car. I can't build this screen sitting in front of me. I don't know what the hell's inside this thing. I'm one of the most technical people I know anywhere. I cannot build this. I have a miter saw. I'm really good with the miter saw, but the hell if I know how to build a miter saw? Like,
Yeah.
like the idea, like I am 20 billion times, like I'm infinitely, there's not even, you can't even put a number on it, more productive and more wealthy because I get to leverage a whole bunch of engineers at Apple who build stuff and a whole bunch of engineers at whatever. Sure.
Sure.
Like I
Yeah.
don't, sure, I don't know what any of this stuff is. These people have devoted their entire lives to making this an awesome microphone that I can use. And I got it for $200. It cost me just a little bit of technical, it cost me a few hours worth of doing some other thing that I specialize in to get like literally like a billion cumulative years of science and study and production to put this in front of my desk. And I'm just like chilling out and using it to talk to you over the freaking internet. God knows we try to make that explanation for the internet and the trillions upon trillions of people and interactions and knowledge and trade that actually has to go to not only creating just the very freaking idea of that network, but sustaining it with power and with people who have to go and eat food, who get it from some other system, this trucking system where somebody's turned, like they took this thing and it just bursts into flames and they're like, I'm going to put it into a metal block and I'm going to put a piston under it and it's going to like move a wheel and we're going to push it all the way across the country. It's unbelievable the amount of value that we get through the trade network. It is explicitly the money that gains its value in order to by translating that from person to person. That is the value that money captures, is the fact that we as a group are infinitely more valuable than us as individuals. And when it breaks down, society breaks down to what individuals can do. That's why you saw in Venezuela during hyperinflation, people running through crowds of people running into some farm and literally with sticks beating a cow to death and ripping meat off of the cow and running because they were starving to death because they had no trustworthy money that could actually transmit the value from the farmer to the people. And those people were wasted. They could not work. Their specialization was meaningless because the only way they could get food is by killing a cow out in the wild. They devolved from society back to individuals. They dissolved from order to chaos because the money is the key that holds the value of all of that together. A trade network that lets us be cooperative rather than conflict, like rather than in opposition, like fighting for scarce resources.
Yeah.
That's what the value of money captures. And being a
That was.
radically neutral record keeping system, like, so going back to the original point you were talking about with finances, your doctor had, her Vanguard account open, is a society that requires you to both specialize in food and obtaining water and being a good doctor and nutrition or whatever it is, and being an investor. Everybody also has to be an investor at the same time, is a society that's failing because it means that the money isn't doing its one job,
Yeah.
allowing her to just be a doctor, allowing you to just collect water, allowing me to just make food. Now, not only do I have to make food, but I also have to care what some financial system is doing. I have to learn about derivatives and interest rates and dividends and all this crap. And it's not because I'm an investor. It's not because like I think I'm assessing some company and CEO for their ability to produce or how their network system is and what their business plan is. I'm not actually doing that. I'm just trying to put my numbers into some numbers that I think are going to go up instead of go down. So not only am I having to be an investor, but I'm also specifically a blind, ignorant investor. I'm just throwing my money at something. And I've had to specialize twice to get the benefit of one specialization.
Hmm.
I have been made weaker and poorer by having to do two jobs to keep the value from one of those jobs. The money is failing if everybody in society has to be a trader and an investor just to keep the value they already produced in the world.
I think Saifedean says this really well. You have to work for it twice.
You have to work for it
So you have to,
twice. You have to
right?
work
You
for it
work for your
twice.
money for it once, and then you have to invest it, and you have to make. If you don't invest it, you're kind of screwed. Actually,
Yeah.
that takes us
Your money
perfectly into
sucks. Your
the
money's
yeah.
your money's broken. That's not
It,
you. That's not a you problem. That's not a everybody needs to be an investor, and that's just what it's just the thing that you have to learn in
yeah,
society. No,
yeah.
your money is failing, and so you are having to do two jobs in order to get the benefit of one.
I think that's a perfect pivot to this tweet here that you also posted. It's incredible to me that normal people have no clue that the United States is completely bankrupt with absolutely no way out, and they aren't doing anything to protect themselves. They don't know that their retirements, pensions, social security, and all the other BS government promises aren't payable. And of course, again, this comes back to the money. We wouldn't need all of this if our money worked. We could save
Exactly.
on our own.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if like a good example is like people think that real estate or like a mortgage on a house is like that's like the middle class savings account now, right? Well, it does not actually even keep up with inflation. Now, if you think inflation is CPI, which is just a BS government number that says, what are people buying right now and what are those things cost? Well, understand that CPI is explicitly a measure of wealth, of prosperity inflation. So think about it like this: if you get paid $100,000 and uh, you can afford $20 in steak as like a normal thing, like I'll say every 3 days worth or whatever, and now the price of steak goes up to $30, and you can no longer afford that because it's out of your budget, and so you instead buy chicken because chicken is now $20 for the same periods of time. Well, CPI went up zero because you stopped buying steak and you started buying chicken.
Mm,
You started buying something like the consumer prices of what people are buying didn't move. But what actually happened is steak went from $20 to $30. There was 50% inflation. You had to make a trade-off. You had to make your life crappier, lower quality and lower nutrient density because you could not afford the other thing. Prices of consumer goods are a product of wages. Only if your wage goes up to 150 can you then afford the steak again. Inflation, as simply put as possible, is just the amount of money in the system. How much new money comes into the system. Housing does not keep up with inflation. The average increase in the average expansion of the money supply is about 7% per annum. So every single year for like since like 1970, 1960, it has gone up on average 7% every single year. I actually did a graph in the video, the video I did for when should I sell my Bitcoin. I
yes, that was a
actually
great video.
pulled all the data. I pulled data from the Fed. I bought historical stock market data. I pulled historical Bitcoin price and historical inflation data. Also, something I purchased from some research group, um, and pulled it all together. I mean, it's the first little video I've ever spent like $40 on because like I couldn't find data sources,
Hmm.
um, but um, I pulled it all together and I put it into a chart and I just equaled it all out in respect to the money supply, like what the change in the money supply became to zero. And the stock market just like goes around it. Like people think that like, oh, the stock market's huge, like down to like 22,000 now. It's like it does nothing but go up. Housing, I bought this house for $50,000 20 years ago, and now it's $500,000. If you just measure it against the money supply, they just trail the money supply the whole time. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just the money supply. You're just watching
Yeah.
the value of the dollar fall. And because of that, housing will go up forever. The stock market as an index will go up forever, but it doesn't pay you anything. You're not getting wealthier. Try to sell your house and buy a better house. You're not getting wealthier. Just the prices of
Yeah.
everything are just going up. In
And
fact,
then and then you
in,
get taxed. You get taxed on the
and
gains
you get
because of the
taxed. You get taxed, and some third party is taking a fee for something your money was supposed to do for free.
yeah.
You're getting taxed. Somebody else has control over your life. Somebody else is controlling your retirement and they could lose it. Somebody else has control. The bank owns your house. You're borrowing it from the bank.
Yeah.
Why do they own your house? Did they make a house? No. They printed the loan out of thin air for you to buy it. Let me tell you something right now, folks. If somebody prints money out of thin air so that you can buy something that you now owe to them, they did not do you a favor. They did not get you something. They bought themselves something through your servitude. If they are loaning money that exists, that's a different story because they are taking a risk and they owe that money back to somebody else. But if they print money out of thin air for you to buy a car that you now owe back to them, you owe them the car. They bought themselves a car plus the interest you have to pay on it. They had no money. Now you owe them a car. They bought a car for nothing. That is fraud. That is just defrauding the monetary system. They are getting a rent off of your life for no contribution whatsoever. They aren't providing the water, they aren't making the food, they aren't building the cars. They just get the stuff and you rent your life that you used to be able to afford.
Yeah.
And housing doesn't even keep up with inflation, actually. Housing slowly ticks down, then it's stayed consistently below. And what's funny is anybody who lives in a house and knows about the quality of a house knows that their house isn't as valuable because their grandma's house is 60 years old now and it's fine. Most of the stuff is still working. It's actually built out of reliable, like solid materials. And they know that the house they bought today that's brand new is mostly built out of plastic and it's got a bunch of cardboard in it. And in 20 years, you're going to have to replace walls. You're going to have to fix the roof. You have to do God knows what because it's actually less valuable despite its increase in price because it's built out of cheaper stuff. And people just want to get rid of it, get paid with a loan, and then they're wash their hands of it. I'm done. I'll just let it can degrade all on its own. There's a 30-year mortgage, and sure, you'll have to pay for probably a third of the house's value before you even pay it off. Like you'll not only be underwater through the entire time, but you'll be underwater because the house won't even be sustainable from the price. The only thing you're getting is the devaluation. You're betting against the dollar when you buy a house. You're just betting against the devaluation of the dollar. It's a short on the value of the currency.
Yeah, and people don't want to hold the dollar because I mean they know that the dollar is going to zero. Even the U.S. government, for example, I mentioned this in another conversation. The U.S. government is in $37 trillion of debt. We can see that here, $36.4 trillion of debt, and they're going to keep going further and further into debt, and they're going to keep. It's basically an arbitrage opportunity for them. They don't have to do anything. They can create more money, and they can get you to work for it. They're stealing your time and people don't even notice like the things that you mentioned on this tweet. They think that they're secure. They think that
there's
they
nothing
think that
behind them. The only thing
right,
they can do is print money to pay for it. They don't
that's
make
it.
a surplus. There's no surplus. They're in the hole for they can't pay for their interest. The interest charge on the things they already couldn't afford is the most expensive charge today. Which means that not only is there no net contribution of resources anywhere, but the only thing you are literally going to get it paid for, like you'll get your, $10,000 in Social Security when it literally costs $2,500 to fill up a grocery cart.
Yeah.
And that's not an exaggeration. It just will. Tell somebody that it costs $400 to, try to explain to somebody in 1990 that it was going to cost $400 to fill up a grocery cart. That would have
Yeah.
seemed bonkers, absolutely insane. It's so easy to go spend $400 at the grocery store now, especially if you get anything of quality. Buy something organic and buy something that's just not in like a box that's just wheat with, infused nutrients that practically should be a pharmaceutical product. It's like it's basically plastic grain and fake flavoring and fake dyes. Anything that's not in that category, go buy like a real food. Go buy steak, go buy chicken, go buy a nice organic apple that doesn't have, a carcinogenic pesticide all over the outside of it. And just fill up your cart. It'll be $400 in no time.
Yeah,
Absolutely no
easily.
time. And it'll be $2,500 and it will be normalized.
Yeah.
They'll be paying $40 for a latte And everybody would be like, it's
That sounds so
$7
ridiculous.
for a
Yeah.
milk alternative? Are you kidding? It was literally $5.
Yeah.
$5 is a reasonable price for almond milk. And people will think that it's normalized so fast.
Yeah.
So fast. People have no idea. Their perspective is what happened, 4 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago. And then suddenly you're, 70 years old and you're like, in my day, steak cost a nickel. Like, and people just don't realize that is literally like that amount of, like, legit going from steak at $5 to whatever is $23 or whatever when I buy my steak for a pound, or 5 cents to $23, excuse me. That is literally a fake subsidy, a defrauding of the monetary system that has built the counterfeit class that exists today.
Yeah.
Where did all that value go? Where did that 99% of the value of that steak end up? In giant corporations, in financial institutions, in the political class, in the bureaucracy. These things, literally the fuel that feeds this cancer, is the defrauding of the monetary system. Where's your time? People wonder, why is it that like technology is making everything so much better at like an insane pace, like at a shocking pace, and yet nothing is actually better. We don't have any more time. All it seems to do is speed things up. Well, that's because they target 2% inflation as a target, which means like I use an analogy in one of my videos. Imagine you get paid $10,000 and you buy like a subset of things for $10,000, and that's your standard of living, right? You buy your Netflix, you buy your food, you buy your whatever, and that's a $10,000 standard of living. That's your life. 5% inflation means that at the end of the year, all of those same things now cost $10,500. So you got poorer. Now you have to decide, I'm going to cancel my Netflix subscription. I'm going to drive less and I'm going to go out to eat less. I'm going to lower my standard of living because now the target inflation has made me poorer by default. And if you get a 5% raise, if you fight for a 5% raise, if you're now in the uncomfortable position of having to beg someone to pay you more, now you're just back to zero. You were poor for a short time until you got the raise. And now you're just back to your same standard of living. 5%. What should have happened, all of that technology, just like when hard drives are cheaper, when TVs are cheaper, when computers are cheaper and more powerful, you literally are supposed to have had your money get more valuable. That is what naturally occurs if nobody is cheating the system.
Yeah.
Your money grows in value. Why? Because society gets better. Nobody goes to work to break stuff, just the government. Just the government and the financial system goes to work to break stuff for other people so that they can get rich. Otherwise, you go to work to make something better, to provide a service to somebody that actually is desirable, that somebody wants, to keep somebody's internet on, to fix a car, to innovate and make something better. If you go to work and at the end of the day things are worse, you've had a terrible day. You're upset, noticeably. Everybody goes to work. The purpose of work is to make things better, is to improve security, sustainability, prosperity, time, is to give us all time to do the things that really matter. If you did not get 5% more wealthy, if all of those things that you buy didn't become $9,500 instead of $10,000, you were stolen from at an astronomical scale. Like to the point of trillions of dollars were siphoned through a poisonous system of fraud from your life. And if you lost 5% on top of that, like you got an income tax twice, and you just didn't see the second one. Like you got super scammed, and people just don't really think that this is normal. We are supposed to have free time. We're supposed to have an enormous amount of free time. Life is literally supposed to get easier every single year. And it would if our money system wasn't trash. But it is. And we simply have the best trash on a giant pile of garbage. It's
That's
an awful system for sustaining value and for promoting prosperity. And all of it is literally just the fact that the engine of innovation and the engine of the human spirit is so unbelievably powerful that there are a lot of ways in which life still does get valuable through trade, even when the money sucks, even when the system itself is barely hanging on by a thread. The US government is completely bankrupt. They have in one of those videos or whatever I did, I explained. Actually, I think it's the why. When should I sell my Bitcoin? I think it's the same one. Is that you can map out the trajectory of the U.S. debt is so easy to see, so easy to see because it's beautifully consistent. In 1975 to 1985, it doubled. It was like 900 billion to like, well, it actually is like, I think it almost tripled during that year or during that decade. Um, and then from 1985 to 1995, it doubled from like 1 trillion, 1.4, 1.5 trillion to almost 3 trillion. Then from 95 to 2005, it doubled again. I think it's about 7 trillion. Then from 2005 to 2015, it doubled again to about 16 trillion. And then from 2015 to 2025, which will be at the end of 2025, it'll be 37, 38 trillion. And it'll be doubled again. Like it doubles every 2 years, every 10 years. And
yeah.
trust me, there's going to be inflation. We have reached a point of fiscal, what's referred to as fiscal dominance, where it doesn't matter which course of action we take because the debt is so large that if you try to rein in inflation through the interest rate by raising the interest rate, well, then the government will be printing so much money in order to pay for the interest that the money will inflate. And if you try to actually have it so that the government doesn't implode and default on all of their debts and have to print lots of money, you would lower interest rates for the bonds. And then that means they're going to have to issue a lot of bonds, which means there's going to be a lot of inflation. There is inflation through high interest rates and a huge economic problem, or there is inflation through low interest rate and huge economic problems. Like there is no course of action. They're broke. The only path is print money. It's whether or not they're printing money for the interest rate or they're printing money in order to prevent the increase in the interest rate. But in 2035, the debt's going to be 70 or 80 trillion dollars. It just is. There is no, that trend's not going to break. And there is no massive fundamental shift. I mean, anybody who's excited about Trump, whatever, like sure, they'll probably cut a bunch of, discrepancy spending. What's it called? That's not the word. There's like $1 trillion worth of just like surface level spending that they could actually reasonably cut, but that's not going to be systemic. Like the big systemic ones are Medicare, military, Social Security, like these huge things, and then the interest on the debt. These things aren't going to change,
Are
and
you
there's
talking
not
about
really
discretionary spending?
discretionary. What did I say?
Discretionary.
Discrepancy? That's
Discrepancy.
discretionary. Thank you. I was like, that's not the word. Um, Discretionary spending. I mean, seriously, the only way that you would be able to turn this around would be gutting Medicare, Social Security, and just basically admitting that they're going to default on it. But instead, they'll keep their promises by again, paying you $10,000 a month when it costs $2,500 to fill up your grocery, and you're unbelievably poor, and your retirement
Yeah.
is jack all. Like it doesn't mean anything, and you're not wealthy. You're still like on a hella struggle bus, and your kids and grandkids, if you're lucky enough to have them, will will help pay for your housing or whatever. But your Social Security won't be jack. It'd be completely useless. Um,
Yeah.
and it's because they can't afford it. It's because it doesn't mean anything if it has nothing to do with the resources. Again, money is just a reflection of resources. Like if you have 10 apples to buy and it's the only thing in the society, and I have $10, well then the equilibrium price of an apple is $1. If I have $20, it's $2. It's two, but there's still just 10 apples.
Yeah, and people
Only
will
10
argue
people are
with
going to
you.
eat. Doesn't
People
mean
will argue
jack.
with you. There's economists who are telling you that, oh no, if the money supply increases, then no, prices don't increase. It's just imaginary. It's
No,
because of corporate greed. It's because of people consuming too much. It's because of this and that. But no, the money supply has nothing to do with it. I see
it's
so
funny
many
how
videos. It's
corporate
fucking
greed
scary.
gets like really bad in like super like short like time period concentrations, and it also happens to it also just like corresponds with just shortly after they print trillions of dollars out of thin air. Like that is such a crazy coincidence that greed is just like a
Yeah.
temporary phenomenon that gets like really bad at these like specific places where it's just after somebody printed trillions of dollars out of thin air and dumped it into the economy.
Yeah.
But like nobody gets like all monetary inflation economic arguments in regards to like, oh, I'm going to manipulate the it's literally the idea that, you know, let's say in your house, you know, you're budgeting for your house and you're trying to keep track of like, you know, do I have more chairs this month or less chairs? Do I have more furniture? Are the things in my house more valuable? And then your budget comes out negative. And so you're like, well, if I make it positive and I just increase like a bunch of tokens over in like I'll make a subsidiary to my house and I'll put a bunch of tokens in this subsidiary and then I'll pay more for the chairs that I had. Well, now our situation will be better because I now have a surplus. And the ledger, the accounting system is what dictates how wealthy I am rather than the fact that like I had to sell my couch. Like that, and
Have you
now I just
seen?
don't have a couch.
Do you watch The Office at all?
Yeah, The Office. Oh yeah, of course.
Have you seen the Have you seen the episode where Holly asks Kevin, I think it is, what is a
Mhm.
Keleven?
What is a Clevin? Yes,
That's exactly what this
that's
is,
exactly what it is.
right?
It's a mistake plus Clevin, a
Yeah.
mistake plus Clevin equals
Oh,
7 or whatever.
yeah. A mistake plus Keleven means we can go. She means Kevin gets to go home or something. Like it's just it's so funny, and that's what the entire system is built on. It's built on like if you look at the U.S. national debt, half of the deficit is just the US paying interest. Like we can see that here. The
Yep.
US deficit is $2 trillion. The interest on the debt is $1 trillion. So half of the deficit, half of the excess spending is going towards debt spending that was done before. So this is the Clevin, right? Like
Hmm.
the fact that they can create more money out of nothing. They can go to the Federal Reserve, get them to buy some of their bonds if there's nobody on the market willing to buy their bonds. The Federal Reserve goes and buys their bonds. That's the Clevin, right? That's the accounting fix to all of their problems. Like you just create a fake unit of currency, solve your problem. Who cares about what's happening tomorrow, the next day, the next day? Today, we're happy. We get to go home early. We get to go home by 5 because
Hmm.
we figured out this random solution to this problem that really doesn't exist. I have a
Every single bit of it. Every
yes,
single one of those economic conversations and those the Keynesian excuses for, oh, if we buy bonds extra, or we guarantee a bunch of housing derivatives and it will make things more wealthy. If we insert a bunch of money through this part of the economy, then that will spur economic activity. Every single bit of it. Trace it back to what is actually happening. Every last strategy, plan, model all goes back to how do you make people wealthier and how do you make life better by writing numbers on a piece of napkin?
that's it.
Like
I have one
it's
question for you.
all just printing, it's all just inventing
That's it.
numbers out of thin air. And the only thing that you can do is take resources from somebody who actually made them in the world to people who wrote numbers on paper. That's the only thing that
Yeah.
happens. And then what they do is they make it look like there's positive economic activity by just measuring the people who got the numbers on the piece of paper
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
being like, look, our accounting worked out when we fudged the numbers. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, congratulations. Of fucking course it did. Like
Yeah.
I just don't. It's like
I
GDP
have
went up after we printed $2 trillion out of thin air.
so I have a
Duh,
question for you that I ask
duh,
all
it
my
did. You printed
of
$2 trillion
course.
out of thin air. What do you think the GDP means?
Yeah.
Like, oh God bless.
It's just,
Anyway,
it's such a it's fake, right? That's so. I
yeah.
have a question for you that I ask all my audience. We're just nearing the end of it. Uh, I watched that video with you, Newt Svenholm. Is that his name? And I own an
Knut,
Apple.
yeah, yeah, Knut Svanholm, yeah,
Yeah, great video.
love that guy. Yeah,
I'll maybe I'll link the video in the description. But
yeah. I've done
I
an
had a
audiobook
question for you.
for his all three of his books. Wait,
Yes.
four? Sovereignty through
Oh,
mathematics, Bitcoin, Infinity divided by 21 million. Four. Wow, 4 books. Man,
four
that dude
books.
writes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, just based on the ideas of that and just
Hmm.
everything that Bitcoin does. What do you think is the most important downstream effect of Bitcoin? Let's say 10, 20, 30 years from now. How do you think Bitcoin is going to change the world?
It will fix a decatrillion misallocation of resources.
Hmm.
It'll kill the counterfeit class. The financial system will not be the most important thing in the economy anymore.
Hmm.
Lawyers will not have the biggest houses. Bureaucrats will not be the richest, and politicians will not be the richest people. Um, it it will mean that to earn money, you can't defraud money anymore. To earn money, you make stuff and trade, and
And that
that
really scares people.
that will be one of the greatest reallocations of wealth
Yeah.
in history, literally in history. And I don't think people recognize that and understand the value of Bitcoin itself is in solving that problem. And
Yeah.
I think most people don't like. Here's an interesting statistic that most people don't know. People think that, and also goes back to my notion of like giving somebody giving you a loan is not doing you a favor. Like they're buying themselves something. Foreign aid, the IMF and World Bank and Western nations giving developing countries loans, that's not aid. That's how they own developing nations. That's how they exploit them. Give them a loan, and now they owe all of their economic now what an economy that used to make food for themselves and used to be a diverse, robust economy now does nothing but farm sugar and export it to the United States. And if the United States ever like starts to close up, now they have zero infrastructure. They don't grow their own apples. They don't make their own energy. They export sugar and they import every single thing, every other thing. And so when the global economy goes on lockdown, they literally starve because nobody bothered to put any apple seeds in the ground. They were all doing paying sugar to the United States as interest on the loan. Loans are ways to control people. Do you feel free? Do you feel like your bank is doing you a favor when you have to pay them every month?
No.
The statistic is that the net result, this is in Alex Gladstein's fantastic work. Uh, he's also got it in Check Your Financial Privilege, which is his book. But the IMF, what's the, how the IMF and World Bank financial structuring. Oh God, I'll send you the link to it. I can't remember the freaking title of it right now. It is a monumental piece of research. But the net movement of resources of capital for all of the foreign aid since like 1970 is from the developing world to the Western world in the amount of $64 trillion.
Wow.
All of that aid and all of those loans made the West $64 trillion wealthier by extracting it from the developing world all over the planet. That is not that's not aid. It's a scam. It is a way to exploit the fact that they cannot print any money. Their debt is not denominated in their currency. They cannot escape it. They give a bunch of political oligarchs and dictators loans, and then those dictators force their people to pay taxes in order to pay off those loans. They want dictators in power in all of those countries. They don't want them to have a robust economy because the dictator is going to give them their sugar. The dictator is going to make sure that they're planting the soybeans. If they actually have a free economy, people just might choose not to do it. And you can't like it's going to be a whole lot hell of a lot harder to indebt, 20 million people in the country than one dictator who then controls 21 million people. And the the important thing to realize is that the fiat problem is greater than $64 trillion big. That's how much value we are talking about putting back in the place it's supposed to go. That's the level of fraud that has occurred through how bad our systems of money are, which means that Bitcoin at $64 trillion has only begun to solve the problem.
Yeah.
A dominant global money, it's more than a $64 trillion problem. Just on paper. Just on paper, it's more than a $64 trillion problem. It'll be $100 trillion. And that's not because like, oh, it's going to go up to forever. And it's like, no, that's literally just the size of the monetary problem. How much are we defrauded through all the various fiat systems around the world? It's $10 trillion a year. Easy. And anything that can solve that problem and allow people to get around it is worth bare minimum $10 trillion. That's why when Bitcoin falls to 90,000, 60,000, when it fell to $2,000 after 20, I don't care, because I understand the size of the problem Bitcoin is solving, and I understand that nobody's going to get it, and it's going to keep doing this, and it's going to keep going through these cycles, and people are going to just realize it in hindsight that, well, it didn't die, so obviously you would own a little bit of Bitcoin, and then it will just be just like housing. Everybody just expects housing to go up. That wasn't normal. That wasn't under a gold standard. That wasn't the thing that everybody did. Now it just is. And you don't have to explain it to people. People are just like, obviously it does. Obviously, the stock market goes up forever. Well, no, that's just because of our monetary environment. It will get to a point where people are just like, obviously Bitcoin goes up because society gets better and it stays 21 million and nobody can cheat it. Nobody can defraud it. And of course, it's the money everybody trusts because I can verify it. Like it's an open global protocol. There's no government behind it. There's no master that's cheating it. And it will become more valuable because society gets more valuable and it will be the dominant money. And the only thing that can unseat it is a more trustworthy money. And it's not going to be your shitcoin, and it's not going to be some government backed, I've got a safe full of stuff and I've got a big tank, because I don't trust the tank or the safe. I trust what I can verify with my own two eyes, with my own computer, with my own system. And the longer it lives, the longer it survives, the more people will trust it, just because it's been there and nobody's been able to change it.
Exactly. Yeah. Guy, that was a really amazing conversation. I think I learned so much from you. I feel like my audience definitely learned a lot from you.
I hope so. I hope so. And I hope I didn't,
want you
offend too many people. And I don't want to, I talk like I know a lot, but I mean, I am the guy who's read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I understand, people don't have like a frame of reference, and, maybe their experience with me is just like, oh, I'm listening to this random guy on a podcast or whatever. But if you want to check, if you want to do the work and back it up, I literally have, I don't know, 1,200 episodes of a podcast, and it's not just me rambling. I'm reading research papers, work, monetary history, economics. If you think you have an argument that refutes it, I guarantee you I have an episode on that argument, and I have broken it down one way or the other. I have tried to position both sides, and I'm trying to paint myself a picture for how it works and why this thing is not dying. And, if most of the idea, thank you. The website is basically bare minimum right now. We're actually doing a lot on the background, but it is still a good way to start getting a hold of it. But if you just go to the podcast feed, so, and I have the YouTube channel as well. All the chats and stuff are published on that, but yeah, check it out. I don't really do much with my YouTube channel, but I'm trying to actually dedicate a little bit to it, because it's actually growing. Like I've never paid any attention to it because it's a trusted third party. I don't feel like I own my YouTube channel, and I feel like I'm inevitably going to say something gets me kicked off.
This was awesome.
I've invested in Noster. Oh, yeah. That's a great one. So the audiobook is right there. And there's a VJ, the guy who wrote it. But any FUD that you think somebody's positioned really well, I promise you there's an episode about it. Any economic principle, I promise you there's an episode about it. Spend a little bit of time. spend a little bit of time, because I know it's hard to believe and it seems a little crazy, but I genuinely believe that we are in the largest monetary shift probably in 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, I cannot understate how important the shift we are, and it's not over. It's not, like I said, it's going to take 40 to 50 years. And during that 40 to 50 years, the people who get it will profit so massively against the people who don't get it. And
Yeah.
reality doesn't care whether you get it. Reality doesn't care whether it's fair. If you do something that's not aligned with reality, it doesn't matter how nice you are. If you jump off a cliff, gravity is not going to give you an out. It's not. If you do something wrong, you can be the best person in the world and you will still fail and you will still be punished for it.
Yeah.
Try to learn. Spend, you spent hundreds of hours, thousands of hours learning your specialty to earn money, to get a career. Spend 10 hours learning what money is and why you should choose one over the other.
Yeah.
Um,
And your channel does a great job explaining it all. What I'll do is I'll
I
link it
hope
in the
so.
description
I hope
below.
so. I've tried to hone my
Yeah.
craft for a really long time, and it's not easy. But I try to be good at explaining things. I do my best.
Yeah. I think you do an amazing job. Guy,
I
I really
appreciate that.
appreciate your time here. Thank you
Yeah,
so
man.
much. I'll link your
That was
I'll
cool
link
hanging
your
out,
YouTube
man.
in the description.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll link your YouTube in the description. I'll link your X in the description so people can go and follow you. I'm sure they'll find some value in this conversation. I guarantee it.
I hope so.
Yeah, so if you to my audience, if you do find value in this, go and follow Guy Swan. He absolutely the information that he puts out is just absolutely amazing, and I find it so valuable as
Yeah.
somebody who's learned about Bitcoin for a while. So
And also on that, if anybody had any, what I'm trying to do is the little short form videos people tell me are like really valuable just because they can share them, and it's like
yeah,
like a little piece of digestible information. So any ideas or any things like questions that you have, even if I've done a show on it, like I get in, I'm not going to be like, go do your homework and go listen to my show. I just did an hour episode on it. Like it's actually really helpful to be reminded of what most people's perspective is and like the things that they are struggling with. And like I have a list. I'm trying to do a bunch more of those 4-minute videos and try to get that argument down as succinct as I possibly can so that there's at least a spark. There's at least, some mental picture that you can paint to start to wrap your head around it to encourage you to go down the rabbit hole and listen to the hour-long rambling and all that good stuff. So uh, feel free to reach out, tag me, insult me. I don't. I'm not. I got a thick skin. I'm not going to be bothered. Disagree. That's cool too. I like to debate. So yeah. Hope you
awesome,
get something useful out of it. Thank you. Thank you for
absolutely.
having me on the show, dude. Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on, man, and putting in your time, giving us all this valuable knowledge. I think you dropped so many gems in that conversation. That was awesome. Really appreciate your
Appreciate it.
time, Guy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming. I will post this in the next few weeks, few days, whatever it is. I
Awesome.
think people are
Let me
going to
know.
love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Guy. Really
Later, dude.
appreciate it. Let me just stop recording.